Our world is soaring toward 2012. Time is speeding up. Chaos is shifting into a new level, and we feel the pull to unlock the mysteries of the universe. Timeless spiritual wisdom offers the point of stability to navigate these times and to open our greatest potential. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the fun and knowledge of visionary best-selling authors Shri and Kira as they explore these mysteries and invite your higher love to come forward. And now, here are Shri and Kira.
Namaste, I am wisdom teacher Shri Raa.
And I am Kira Raa, and I am inviting you to join us on a journey tonight because we're diving deep into questioning authority. You know, is it good for society or not to question what's going on? We're living in this age of the anonymous movement, of Republicans and Democrats literally just going after each other with vicious tenacity. Politics, wars, the possibility of financial meltdowns. Is it time to demand our answers by questioning authority? Is that really the way to do it? Shri, what do you think? That's where we're going tonight.
Well, questioning authority reminds me of so many years past, because truly I think all of us go through an evolutionary state where we begin to stop taking it for granted, to stop behaving in unexplored ways. You know,
it's so funny. I was just hearing somebody go, behave. You know, I just had Austin Powers flash through me. I don't know why, but there it was. And so the key is, you know, does it help us to question authority? And why do we question authority?
I think the other question is, how can we?
Well, that's a great one. Yeah.
So let's look at this a little more deeply. Questioning authority emerges when we begin to accept that we have rights, that we're sovereign beings.
Well, you know, I'm laughing here, Sri, because it's like, well, who gave you those rights?
Uh-huh.
You know, I mean, it's like, and see, this is what happens, and this is why I'm laughing, because the minute you start with the question, you start getting lost in the questions, and what we really need to look at here are the greater questions, and the reality of when does a question serve, and when is a question a distraction?
Absolutely, because so many people use questioning as a way of interrupting flow, as a way of taking energy away from a situation or obstructing a resolution.
It's also a way of not listening. You know, a lot of times when we're asking questions, it's because we don't want to hear the answers. We just want to feed a certain stream of energy within our own mind. And, you know, give you an example. This past weekend, you and I had a couple people suggest that we watch a film on YouTube, and this film was about chemtrails. Now, those of you that know Shri and I know that Shri, myself, the Archangelic Realm, yes, chemtrails are out there. Yes, chemtrails are real. And if you don't know anything about chemtrails, go to YouTube and type in chemtrails, and you'll learn everything you didn't want to know about chemtrails. And the key is not to get preoccupied with the fact that this phenomenon is out there, because it is out there. It was more fascinating for me, Shri, as we watched the movie, to notice how people were spun into a near frenzy over using questions as a technique, almost to create more fear, almost to create more drama.
Well, yeah, because questions have an energy driving them. And so there's a couple of observations here. The one is, who are you sending the question to? Are you able to reach the true power that needs to listen to your question? Are you able to receive a response that addresses the need behind the question? So oftentimes questioning is brought forward because we have an anxiety. We have a need to believe that it ought to be, that it ought to be different.
Well, wait, I got to stop you right there, because that was such a loaded comment that you just made. Number one, anxiety. I would say there is probably a heightened state of anxiety on the planet that has reached a level it has not, I certainly have not seen it in my lifetime. And the reality is that you talk about this heightened state. So when we gaze at the planet right now and we say, okay, let's talk about, are we questioning authority or should we question authority? And what does that really mean? You know, all the words of anarchy and tyranny all come up. But the reality is there is this worldwide fear that is causing a upheaval in governments, in the way that we interact with each other, in the way that our world operates, and is causing the need to say, unless I get an answer to a question that I have created, I'm not going to be happy. And it doesn't matter if the answer is even out there, and it doesn't matter unless it would be the specific answer you want. It's like the question's a setup.
Well, the question is a setup, and oftentimes the questions are not thought through carefully. Truly, the anxiety that would drive one to question, the sense that somehow there's needs not being met, that a greater value is not being fulfilled. There's all kinds of reasons why one might question. And when that anxiety is present, how you question, who you question, the type of question you ask affect the outcome.
Well, not only that, it's how you ask, right? Because let's look at, let's go all the way back to Arab Spring, right? The question they were saying is, why hasn't this changed and we want it to change? And then you look at the outcome of the questioning. And as we tie this into, is it good? Should we be questioning authority? Well, you think about, I go back over the past 30 years and look at the pervasive shift in attitudes, in paradigms, in expression. Worldwide, this is not limited to any one country. This is a worldwide shift. Yet the worldwide shift is based upon an unmet need of humanity. And when we let the questions take over, then the authority gets larger because they are never, I'm laughing here thinking about the UFOs, right? So there was this whole thing we know about, there was Project Blue Book, there were all these years, there is evidence that we are not alone in the universe. And even scientifically, it's almost infinitesimally impossible that we'd be alone in the universe. Yet, not too many years ago, they finally held a huge official press conference with the National Press Club, thousands of people, interviews, people that had, really credible, we're talking about credible people from all over the world came, and it received almost no publicity. It received almost no exposure because the questions that they brought forward, the bottom line is, don't want to be answered. Those in the power that have the answers will never give the answer, so all it does is inspire more questions, thereby inspiring more confusion, fear, manipulation of energy, misunderstanding. I mean, it's a wild ride, Sri.
Well, and it also inspires apathy because
Yes.
the questions do not seem to produce an effect. And the bureaucracies that have been infiltrated and laid all around those who have power serve as a defensive barrier. And so you ask yourself, is a corrupt democracy any better than a monarchy or a tyrant, an army-driven country?
No.
And we could have a lovely debate on that issue of which is the freer
Well,
society.
I think we brought up about 10 things tonight that we can have a lovely debate about, and quite a few shows about, quite frankly.
But truly, it gets down to your essential authority and your ability to look at what's going on in your life.
Well, and to look at what's going on around you and the judgments and the belief systems of people around you. How many of you, when you even saw the title of this show, Questioning Authority, Good for Society, how many of you either went, oh God, bunch of old hippies questioning authority, or thought about, yeah, anonymous, we're gonna get out there. Yet the reality is, and where we want to take this, and where we're gonna go in the second half of the show is, what is the higher objective of even asking a question? Are we the question, or is the question a result of our own fear, our own concern? I saw a brief, I guess it was like a snippet, an audio snippet, a video snippet the other day on the net, where this guy was making a case that gay marriage would lead to people marrying turtles and people marrying horses, and that if we no longer define marriage as one man and one woman, and we let it be one human to another human, that would lead to human-animal marriage. And I must admit that the way he did it and the way he was putting in the questions would lead those that were hung up on the question down this path of absolute, forgive me, insanity. The reality is that there is a beautiful recognition that is waking up in humanity that things are certainly getting off track right now. And how do we bring them back? To take the gift of gay marriage and bring it and compare it to somebody who's gay marrying an animal, or someone who's not gay marrying an animal, I don't know what it would be, is insane. It's an insane leap, and it was made based on the questions. And the questions were coming from a quote-unquote mainstream news anchor who was stimulating the person who was talking to get them to go there. So talk to me about that.
Well, so that really brings us to the quality of the question.
Yes.
You know, questions are a sneaky way of slipping in an agenda.
Right.
We disguise it as a question.
Right.
Questions are a sneaky way of breaking up one's attention span, of distracting. They're a sneaky way of grabbing control.
Right.
And so you look, what are the real motives? You know, I'm asking the question behind the question right now. What is the purpose of your question?
Well, and this is the key. You know, for example, the gift is that when you recognize that the objective of a question is actually not to find the answer. The objective of the question is to move toward a more refined question, to keep going. Because when you move in that direction, when you're asking the question with the sacred intention of getting the greater question, you find out you suddenly have no question. That there's only one question, because this is how the divine works. You know, the question of, let's say, how can I get rid of my anger? How can I change my attitude? Those questions actually are bogus questions. They're never going to lead anywhere. That has been discovered eons ago. The wiser way is to know the source of the question. And the source of the question is human nature itself, the essence of your own nature. And so the only way that you can move forward is to recognize you are not your nature. Now there's a big one. You are not your nature. Your nature is influenced by your past thoughts, and you are not your past thoughts. So if you observe all your thoughts, what happens is you soon find out that your thoughts have been influenced by the environment you are in, physically and mentally.
So let's all take a deep breath.
Was I on a soapbox?
We'll talk about a soapbox. You almost blew my mind there. We covered a cosmic thought form.
Ooh, guys, we covered a cosmic thought form. And you know what, Shri? I'm so glad you feel that way, because that's exactly where we need to go. We need to bust the paradigm of the question. We need to bust the old belief systems, and we need to go into the second half of this show exploring that deeply.
All right, so we went from questioning authority to questioning ourselves to questioning our own nature to the recognition that possibly our history is defining our questions.
Boy, have we been warping time, because that's a lot of ground for the first half of this show, and I'm excited about where we're going next.
All right, amateur philosophers, amateur questioners.
And professionals alike.
Let's pull up a chair. We're going to jump even deeper into this dynamic conversation. Stay with us.
Namaste, beloved one. This is Kira Raa, and I am inviting you to take a journey of the soul in the land of the heart. Imagine your life free from chaos and filled with creative clarity. Imagine waking up each day in your private lakefront casita, greeted by brilliant sun, flowers, and birds. It is here that you will effortlessly resurrect your divine blueprint in pristine energy. Yes, I am inviting you to join us for a personal resurrection vacation retreat at beautiful Lake Atatlan, Guatemala. Here, you can rejuvenate your life as you indulge in Tosa Spa cuisine, private healing sessions, yoga, tai chi, meditation, and loving support. Imagine enjoying pure air, zero noise pollution, and endless stars in this ascended nirvana. The time is now to claim your true joy. Learn more by visiting shriandkira.com and just click on the Resurrection Vacation Treat page. Tosa La Laguna, healing lives, healing hearts. We welcome you home.
The path of self-ascension is a conscious decision that brings your life experience into alignment with soul consciousness, the rare gift of an active approach to living in the heart and manifesting the present moment. Sri Ram Ka and Kira Raa invite you to visit Self-Ascension Magazine, a free online self-ascension hub that lifts your spirits and frees your heart to soar. On the Self-Ascension Magazine website, you can read Sri and Kira's perspectives on what's happening today, discover a daily meditation and weekly practice, watch special video and audio clips, follow Kira Raa's messages from the Archangelic Realm, and learn about upcoming events or courses. Relax and enjoy a visit to Self-Ascension Magazine online at www.shriandkira.com. Explore, participate, and unfold this rare treat for yourself. Remember, that's shriandkira.com.
Oh, welcome back. We're glad you're with us.
You know, we sure are. And for those of you that are still recuperating from my tirade, so to speak, we're going to make it really easy because the key here was to capture your attention. Have we done that?
I hope so.
Me too. And so the reality, my loves, is that when we question authority, when we ask ourselves, even is that good for society, the reality is, Shri, as we so well know, there are actually 5 levels to this process.
Which brings us to the mind of a 2-year-old.
Well, then I feel great now. Put me in my sandbox. I'm good.
Okay, how many of you have had a child around you that says, why? Why?
All the time.
Why? And you ask, why are they questioning? Why do you want to know? What is this? And it isn't about the question.
Right, it never is. What is it about?
It's about the ability to differentiate. It's about the ability to find out, maybe I have some authority.
Well, what a wonderful point. To come back to the 2-year-old discernment that maybe I have some authority. Maybe the authority, the wisdom, the power, the gift, the freedom has been sitting right inside me the whole time.
And then, of course, the 2-year-old begins to realize the world is pretty big and scary.
Well, you know, and it leads us to when we're questioning authority, we've been trained how to do it, haven't we? Isn't the fact that we start questioning authority because at some point we began questioning ourselves?
Well, we did, and we also were taught how to question and what was acceptable to question and when to open your mouth and when not. So we start bringing in a whole series of beliefs and structures around questioning. And that really limits our ability to get the full value from the process.
In so many ways. Well, in so many ways. And you know, remember that it's important to look at everything we've been talking about today because it's time for change. We are at the ultimate time for change, which means perhaps it's time to pay attention to the whole concept of questioning and why we question. So Shri, why don't we dive into the 5 processes?
Absolutely. So we just touched on the first one. The first real reason we question is to discover our own authority.
Ooh, well, there's the 2-year-old.
That's it. To have a sense of self.
Exactly.
If there's no questions, we become a pawn in the flow. And so to just have a sense of selfness.
Well, and you know, when we question from that aspect, what we're really saying is, help me understand. You know, help me. There's just a sense of me that I don't quite understand or am connecting with.
Yeah, I need to be able to feel safe in the world, so help me understand the rules, help me understand how to get my needs met. Lots of levels to help me understand.
Which are expressed in lots of different questions.
Well, and that brings us to the next level of the whole questioning the evolution. So first we want to discover our authority, and then later on we use questioning because we want to protect our own needs. We want to take care of ourselves.
So really number 2 is, so what's from number 1 where it's like, okay, who am I? Number 2 is kind of a, well, how do I express?
Yeah, how do I get my needs met?
Right.
Because I'm feeling like the world's bigger than me, so I have to ask of the world.
You know, it's fascinating, Shri, as we're starting to go through the 5 processes of the questioning and understand the deeper metaphysical tirade Kira went on in the first part of the show. What we're discovering is that all of our questions are a journey.
The questions are indeed a journey, and they have layers of motivation and need. And as you sit with the content that we're sharing with you today, you can discover that this can actually go very deep. So let's just continue with this evolutionary glimpse. So we discover our own authority, we begin to question to protect our own needs, and then as we're coping with life, as we're getting our way through the world.
As we're navigating all of the ins and the outs and the day-to-day.
Well, our consciousness tends to evolve so that our questions become broader, and we begin to question in order to advance values, in order to advance a series of values, either for ourselves or for the environment. And we are now looking at the needs of a group, a greater scheme of things.
Well, and this goes back to what I was sharing earlier, is where when we start allowing the nature of our experience to control our questions, we have lost the greater question, which is what we're building up to.
Absolutely. So these first 3 are all about the nature of our environment, the nature of our upbringing.
Exactly. The past, what I was referring to earlier in the show about the past thoughts. When we let all of our experiences, and by past thoughts I'm talking about from the time we're born to whatever moment we're in now, letting that sum total kind of overlap on all of our questions, because the reality here, Sri, is you've just brought up in number 3, by now you have a finely honed belief system.
You absolutely do. And the belief system is all about coping. It's all about getting along with the world, the perceived world. And when we get to the next level, we're popping to something a little deeper.
So the first 3 have really built upon themselves, leading up to, and if we ever pop, to the next level.
Absolutely. So the first levels, the first 3 are about what we call navigating through density and spiritual activism.
Right, and it's what I mentioned in the first part of the show about this. These are the questions like, well, how do I stop my anger? Well, when you ask, it's kind of that Einstein problems or solutions are never found at the level that they were created. Or
the level of consciousness that creates the problem.
Exactly.
And so when our reality is really organized on coping and the external world, our questions reflect that state of consciousness.
Exactly.
As we move to the next level, we begin to question in order to understand the nature of being.
Ooh, now this is different than the nature of our belief systems. 2 very important discernments here. We start questioning from the level of the being versus the summation of the past thought.
So if you've ever sat down and whether it was at a college campus or in some other format and asked the question, who am I and why am I here and what does it mean to be alive? Those kinds of questions are the most direct in this category, the questioning for the nature of my being.
You know, it's funny, I'm hearing beatnik music, I'm seeing beanies, and I want a cup of coffee.
Well, let me snap my fingers and say cool.
Exactly.
You know, it's
no, I think because as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about where we are in our life when we might actually start evolving into this is usually when we're in college or we're a little older, we're a little more sophisticated, we're becoming more aware of the greater consciousness. And I'm certainly being a little stereotypical there in a moment, but the reality is, I mean, today's coffee shops or today's Starbucks, today's scene is very much the same as it's always been. Where are we discussing? Where did Anonymous start? Well, it started on Facebook and Twitter and everybody talking and coming together and diving into the deeper questions from the greater value, yet not everyone is aligned with this greater nature. Some of it is still aligned with that lower nature.
Well, what we're calling higher or lower is really kind of strata of consciousness. So as we deal with the shared world, you know, we have our social world, our political world. As we deal with this outer world, it seems like everyone's seeking a natural refinement. We want it to get better. We want harmony.
Because we're terrified. You know, and this is what comes back to, it's kind of like this closed-end loop. Because everyone is terrified is why the questions have come to where they are, is why we're talking about, hey, does it serve society to question authority? And what we're coming to a conclusion here is that, yes, it does if you're questioning from a different level.
Absolutely. And so as we look at the evolution of these questionings and these activistic themes, you mentioned Arab Spring earlier on. You know, there's some rock and roll song. It says, out with the old boss, in with the new boss, just like the old boss, you know?
It's true.
And so that really is a cute way of reminding us that the level of consciousness is everything. As long as we question and seek actions based upon a belief in the outer authority, that we need a new authority, what we're going to get is the hierarchy of authority, and there's always going to be, it's always going to fall short. Our needs aren't truly going to be met.
That's true.
And this too is part of the evolutionary gift. At some point you say, you know, I get it. I'm never going to get what I'm seeking by changing the scenery in my outer world.
Well, that's a really powerful recognition, Sri. You know, and the key is, I want to go back here and look at how we question, right? This evolutionary process of questioning is really in itself a model for the evolutionary process of all of humanity.
And even at this 4th level where we question to understand the nature of being, we're still stuck in our minds. We're wanting to understand. We're wanting a concept, a belief, a dogma even. You know, and this is where a lot of people get caught in religion and political discussions, is they're looking for a way to bring their mind to peace.
Because their mind is freaking out. Because everything around them is freaking out. And the other thing, which we've done a show on this once before, is there's such a huge addiction to adrenaline. And these 24-hour news cycles and even the reality shows and everything that's being pummeled in front of society right now says, keep your adrenaline on high gear. Feel anxiety. Well, when we feel anxiety, that's when it's hard, it's almost nearly impossible to automatically refine our questioning, and we stay stuck at that same level.
And there's a myriad of reasons for that, because anytime you're stressed, we default to a previous level of consciousness.
Exactly.
You can't take stress in your next evolution. It's always a step backwards.
Exactly.
So anxiety and fear serve to slow down evolutionary thinking, let alone evolutionary beingness.
And yet, then that's what leads to things like Anonymous and things to all of the other things. So here we are saying, how do we do this? So bring us to number 5, Sri.
Well, let's just make sure we got number 4 fully wrapped up here.
All right, let's do it. I'm excited.
To understand the nature of being means we're still feeding the mind. We're still seeking liberation. And what's really wonderful is as we get ever more refined concepts, ever more refined understandings, we're actually giving ourselves permission to lift. And that's where we hit number 5. We question because we want to realize a state of being.
Well, it's almost like an oxymoron, but it's really like intelligent questioning. Because at that point, intelligent questioning leads us to ever refining questions that lead us to our true needs and our greater expression.
And when we hit that place, the questions cease.
Exactly.
Oh, don't you love paradox?
I do. I love it so much. That's why I was getting so excited, because it's just wonderful. Because when we simply question for the sake of questioning, the bottom line is it does not serve. The whole show was questioning authority. Is it good for society? Well, if you're questioning for the sake of questioning, absolutely it's not for you or for society. Yet, if you can allow yourself these refinements, if you can allow yourself the growth, then yes, it becomes amazingly good for society, for yourself, for our world.
And so questioning is a rather broad way of saying we all must learn, we all must evolve, and by all means ask your questions, but get clear along the way of what need are you trying to fulfill?
Exactly.
What's the question behind the question?
Keep going. And the more we keep going, the more we keep refining, the more our world will shift. So go out there, question the authority, and allow yourself to find your deeper essence, your deepest truth, because you make a difference. And until we have the gift of sharing this precious time with you again, my loves, may you bring a hand to your heart, take in that deep, precious breath, and know that all is truly well.
Thank you for joining us today for 2012 Higher Love. Remember that you can find out more about Sri and Kira by going to SriandKira.com. That's SriandKira.com.